Hey guys, welcome back. It's Dave. I wanted to show you a grid that I put together for those who like to do the double pace lines. I put together a double pace line with the most current elements and factors, including the summary grid. And there's no difference between the two except the fact that there's a additional line per runner now for you to take a second pace line selection and put it in. Okay, I reformulated the grid so that the summative values over here are taken into account both of these races instead of just one. It did take a little time to do that. I'm sure there's quicker ways to do it than I did, but I had to do pretty much each formula at a time and figure out where it would get what I had to backtrack a lot because there was things carrying over that I didn't want carrying over. I didn't realize adding a second running line and being able to not just click and drag the formula down. It threw some time into my work, but I had the time today to do it. And what I did was I did Penn National 1 for tonight, and I'm going to look through the cards for the races that I feel are handicapping friendly, and I'm going to play around with this grid to see how it does. Now, really, again, the main reason I did this is because I know there are people out there, especially talking to some people in the Discord, that like to look at double pace lines instead of just one single line. So what I did was, for my two pace lines, I used the most current that fit today's surface and distance, and looked like a pretty good running line. And then I used within a reasonable amount of time, or without going back too far, I used a race that met today's current distance and surface that had the top speed rating, Briz speed rating. So we don't tie any Briz speed ratings into this model, but now I'm tying it in kind of hidden by using a pace line that has the top Briz speed rating from the past. Again, without reaching back too far. How far you go is up to you. But I do, like I said before, I do know by just chatting in the Discord that there are a few users in there that like to use the double pace lines. Now, with that said, the whole idea of, I had a comment the other day in one of the videos from my endurance factor video, okay? And that was something I put on way in the past that had to do with the matrix system, with the target ability. We had the endurance, we had the target Briz, and so forth. They were multiple factors that dealt with that particular model. And the comment had said this factor here deserves revisiting. And I agree it does. I like the factor. I like it when I tie it into the matrix system. I don't necessarily know if I would tie it into the pace progression model, especially because I like to use it for horses that are running at the marathon routes or distance, such as anything over 1 1/8 miles, I consider. So we have 1 3/8 miles. So it doesn't come about that often. So I don't want to tie it into this model. But at the same time, that's the beauty of this is where thorough capping arrived from. Okay, thorough capping in my mind was, and I didn't name it thorough capping by mistake. I named it thorough capping mainly because of the word thorough, because as time went on, I developed my matrix system model first. Okay, and through trial and error with the matrix system. Having success with it, I put the book out. I've gotten a lot of great reviews from that book. A lot of good comments on my YouTube videos from that matrix system book. But what happened was, over time, I would receive comments about, well, what if you tied this factor into it? Or what if you tied in, let's say, at the time I was using the DRF, what if you tied buyers into it more? Or what if you're using BrizNet? Is it the same thing? And then people started asking about the Brisnet pace figures. And a lot of questions came about as far as the figures go, speed figures that are already given to you by the past performance themselves. And that's where I evolved into, that's where I developed the follow the figures model. And the follow the figures model only deals with speed ratings. Simple as that. It deals with speed ratings. So I eventually played around with tying in the matrix grid together with the follow the figures grid. So you had options. If you wanted a speed cap, you just did the follow the figures. That was very quick. It didn't take long to do a race. If I had a little more time, I would do the matrix system, and then I would do the follow the figures sometime later on. So if there were 8 races I was handicapping, I would handicap at 8 using the matrix model, and then I'd go back a little bit later, and I would tie in the follow the figures. And then what was happening was I'd have a comparison between the two grids, and then over time I started to evolve into making cumulative ratings between the two grids. Instead of having one model selecting these 4 horses and another model selecting these 4 horses, even though it may be similar, I started tying them in together to where, okay, these grids are now working together in unison and coming out with ratings rather than just, looking at numbers. So the thorough capping evolved because of that was my initial idea behind where does thorough capping come from? Well, I'm just combining two. I'm combining 2 models, and then what I did was I started to learn a little bit about the Brohammer model. Okay, feet per second model. So I tied that into it too. So now, before you know it, I had a model that had the matrix system, follow the figures, and I had the Brohammer pace model all tied into one, and then I had a cumulative figure for all 3 of them as well. Well, now what I'm getting at is now we have the pace progression model, which could be used as a standalone, but at the same time, that could be tied in too. Now, again, I know the more models you tie into your handicapping, the more time it's going to take. That's what the beauty of having your own software program, where the program will do it all for you. You download the PPs, the data files, and before you know it, the race is done, and you have all them factors. And that's why some of those models, or a lot of I should say all those models that you purchase for an enormous amount of cash, will have hundreds of factors that you could sort through and compare and everything, because the program does it for you. The more that you have to manually input, the longer it's going to take. But if you take a look here in the grid download, going back, and as you can see how this has evolved over time. We have the double pace pro with the matrix. So if you look at this particular grid here, we have the version 1 of the pace pro model, which only had the 1C, the 2C, the turn, and the final fraction. We did not take into any consideration a lot of the Briz information, such as the pace shape, race shape, and the Briz pace speed figures. Well, we tied that in with the matrix. I tied that in with the matrix model. And then in the end, we have a comparison. Okay, what's the matrix system coming up with? And what is the pace progression model itself coming up with? And this is before I evolved into putting them together and combining this rating and that rating together to get a joint rating between the two. But I eventually did that over time. And I know I'm rambling a little bit here, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to answer some of the questions that I've gotten through, not only through email and through comments, but just through friends of mine that I have that use the system. I get a lot of what about questions. Well, what about tying this together and tying that together? And I just wanted to just allude to the fact that that's where thorough capping came from. Thorough capping is a combination of your handicapping, of what you do, tied together in one. And I just like to tie it together so that I don't have 4 different result options, 4 different models, where one model is pointing me to the 2, 3, 5, and the 6, The other one's pointing me to 2534. Another model's pointing me to the 8327. And what I was able to do is I was able to tie them together into one or two figures that really tell me what are all three models telling me quantitatively about these numbers and these factors. Okay, so again, I went on to off onto a little bit of a tangent there, but at the same time, what the moral of the story is, you could tie together whatever you want to tie together. I mean, you guys, if any of you guys are using the pace progression model, and that's all you use, and you have your own type of handicapping model, such as especially spreadsheet versions, all you got to do is you copy. You've already made a copy of your pace progression grids. Open up a blank page, copy a grid down, and then tie your own grid next to it on the things that you do. I know there's people in the Discord that do that. I'm not going to drop names, but those of you that are in the Discord know that there are people that have come up with their own grids, and the pace progression model is only a certain portion of their grid. They've dived into other things. I know there's one user that still uses the target rating and the ability rating. So there's pieces of the matrix system there, and then he has his own things that he does as well to analyze different portions of the race. And that's really what this is all about. It's really not about following this to the exact T and let it be the be all end all of everything. Tie it into your own handicap and what you do. Don't get away from your own things that you've done for however many years. If you're a qualitative guy and you really like to look at things that can't be measured by numbers, then go for it. Okay? And if you can find a way to tie that in and turn it into a number, again, that's what the thorough capping model is all about. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some more Penn National. I don't know if I'm going to post them. I'll post the results if I like what the double pace line grids are showing me. But if not, I wanted to share a video where I kind of improvised a little bit, and I didn't have an exact agenda that I wanted to share other than this double pace line model. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for tuning in.